When one pondered over it, the circumstances surrounding human birth were indeed absurd and unfair. One could be born holding a golden spoon. Just because of their luck, they were created from the sperm of a loaded BR starred. Just because they were lucky, they were conceived from the egg of a filthy rich bee. B. Text. Effort. It could only be called effort if wagging their tails faster than other sperms was considered to be an act of effort. Others might be gifted with an extraordinary talent, one that could forge a clay spoon into a spoon crafted from gold if the chance to do so arose. The inequity of human birth was the same in this world as well. One might be apt to walk down the path of martial arts, while another could be born with a flair for magic. The point being, disparities between the fellow people were distinct since birth. Me, I had absolutely nothing. The stone of past life has been activated. The stone of the past life cannot be activated again. You will return to the starting line from 13 years ago.
Chapter 11. What? Lee Sung-min sharply asked. He quickly turned around and looked towards Wijihoyen. Wijihoyen had a bored face and was looking at him. What's trash? He didn't know where he got the confidence to ask Wijihoyen. He had gotten a martial skeleton. He had learned the genuine heavens and had practiced every day. He knew he wasn't the best, but he had tried his hardest. That effort was being called trash. Sung-min bit his lip as he glared at Wijihoyen. Wijihoyen met his glance nonchalantly as he opened his mouth. There are way too many unnecessities. First, he criticized. The spear is long. Therefore, it's important to know how to use that length. Wijihoyen held up his hand. He pointed his finger at the spear. But you tried to go close to them. There's no point in doing that. There was no point in using a technique. If you took 5 steps, just 5 steps, your spear could have hit the goblin. I don't have enough strength, is it really? Wijihoyen laughed. Those guys didn't practice any techniques, and your spear isn't blunt either. Even if you don't have enough strength, a spear can stab something. A spear is that kind of weapon. Lee Sung-min listened to Wijihoyen without answering back. It was the first time he had heard things like this. He tried to use a spear before, but no one told Sung-min about spear techniques. Of course, a spear isn't only used for stabbing. You could swing it and beat it, but it's a mistake to do that when there's no need to. Lee Sung-min groaned. He felt anger when he heard that his skills was trash, but listening to his criticism, he could understand his errors. But even if the swings were unnecessary, they were practical. The stance is pretty decent. Using the spear handle should be complimented. Unnecessities happen when you study alone. Wijihoyen nodded his head and rated him. You're not bad. Using the skill I don't understand, but for 1 month with no teacher, right? That's not bad. No, I did it for 13 years. Lee Sung-min drooped his shoulders. Let's go. Lee Sung-min sighed and went towards the goblin. He pulled out the teeth and put the blood in the bottles. Wijihoyen approached him. Go? Where? I have to go to the inn I'm staying at. What about me? Why ask me? Do I follow you? Wijihoyen smiled and asked. To that, Lee Sung-min's mouth opened wide. Follow me? How's this? If you pay for my stay, I will teach you martial arts. Sung-min's mind opened up. He was getting to learn from the small Pegasus. It was an opportunity that wasn't even comparable to the potion he was trying to after.
Chachme?
I can't teach you the Pegasus grace. That's only for heads and vice heads. Even if there are no sects here, I can't teach you. He wasn't even looking for that. But he would accept if Wijihoyen did want to teach him. Aha! Isn't that a great opportunity? Are you going to say no? And no. Lee Sung-min swallowed. Wijihoyen wasn't a mean 13-year-old kid anymore. Now he was like a god to Sung-min. God was making him lunch and was basically feeding it to him. Asterisk, who's that? Lula, who was cleaning the table, opened her eyes. Lee Sung-min had an awkward smile as he brought Wijihoyen. It's an otherworlder who was summoned today. It's Wijihoyen. Wijihoyen said to Lula. It was Lula who wanted Sung-min to call her big sister, but she only looked at Wijihoyen with her mouth open. That made sense. Lee Sung-min had a normal face, But Wijihoyan was different. Good at martial arts, good background, intelligent, and with a good face. The world was unfair. Lee Sungmin complained. Wijihoyan was a handsome person even at 13 years. He was young and didn't have any masculine features yet, but in 5 years, everyone would probably consider him handsome. He's a martial artist from his clothing. Jack muttered. He looked at Sungmin and asked, "Are you gonna let him sleep here?" "Ah yes, they'll pay for him." "Well, that's fine. There's a lot of rooms." Lee Sungmin had to pay more, but he didn't care. He was spending 10,000 Iri for this inn. It was 20,000 Iri, but because Jack was kind enough, he cut the cost by half. The cost is 20,000. With yours, it's 30,000 Iri. Well, seeing your face, I'll do it for 25,000. Thank you. As Jack was being generous, Sungmin laughed happily and nodded his head. He pulled Wijihoyan to the room. Since the room next to Wijihoyan was empty, Wijihoyan was going to use that room. "First, I want to know what you want to learn." Wijihoyan didn't go into his room and came into Sungmin's room. He sat on the bed and looked at Sungmin's room. "First, tell me what you've learned." "I've learned the genuine heavens, one thunder, iron skin, stone body, and the chase soul spear technique." "Okay, where's the book for the genuine heavens?" To his asking, Sungmin lifted the mattress of the bed and pulled out the book. He gave it to Wijihoyan. Wijihoyan looked at it for a bit and clicked his tongue. "I knew it. It's not that great. The only good thing is that you can learn other cultivation methods as well." Wijihoyan frowned. "What do you want to learn?" Wijihoyan asked. "I know a lot of techniques. I didn't master them all, but I memorized all of them. All of them are peak-level techniques, so anything will be of help to you." How to use this opportunity. Sungmin thought. He wanted to first learn some cultivation manuals. His genuine heavens was better than what he had in his past life, but he would switch if Wijihoyan told him another one. "Not a spear technique yet, I need inner strength first." Thankfully, there was something he was thinking of. Sungmin looked at Wijihoyan. "I want to learn a cultivation method." "I thought so." Wijihoyan laughed. "Your genuine heavens isn't really a great method. It's barely a first-level cultivation manual. There are tens of those better than that method in my head. Do you know what the difference between a first-level and a peak-level method? Understanding? That's not wrong, but that's not right either. Understanding is difficult. The difference between those two is the kindness. The peak-level methods are ones that have been perfected through tens and hundreds of years. It's easier to learn and to grow with." Sungmin could agree to that. "How about the amethyst cloud?" "It's uncomparable to the Pegasus Grace. But amethyst cloud isn't too bad either. It's easy to gain inner strength, and if you practice it enough, you might even get to the limit." Wijihoyan said that and suddenly said the words to the technique. Sungmin raised his hands. "Why? I can't memorize it." "Can't you write it down?" Sungmin smiled bitterly. Wijihoyan clucked his tongue. "You don't have the memorization skills." Even as he said that, Wijihoyan took a pen and paper from Sungmin and wrote the manual down. "Why aren't you asking for a spear technique?" Wijihoyan asked as he was writing the manual down. "I need inner strength." "It's like you're saying you don't need a spear technique." "I need one, but I can't even do the spear technique that I'm practicing right now. I don't have the confidence to use a spear technique better than that one even if I learn it." "That's wise of you. I saw your spear skills for just a second. It's barely any use of you to try and learn a better spear technique." The facts hurt. After an hour, Wijihoyan put down the pen. Sungmin politely received the paper from Wijihoyan with 2 hands. Should I ask him for some other technique? As he was going to read, suddenly, a sense of greed rose in his mind. He didn't know the reason, but Wijihoyan was being generous to him. Even now, the technique that he gave Sungmin. It was a technique that was incomparable to the genuine heavens. If this news of this manual ended up in area, there would be blood with people asking to get it. He had gotten a technique like this for just a fee.
Sungmin met Wijihuns ijs.
No. The 13 years of his experience warned him that it would be dangerous to ask more. "Thanks. I only gave what I thought was a fair trade. It's my first friend, so I gave a bit more though." Wijihoyan smiled as he said that. "If you asked more, I would have been very disappointed with you. Wijehoyen added. I don't think that's being a friend. Chapter 12. From as far back as he could remember, Wijehoyen was raised to be the vice-head of a cult. He remembered the bookshelf, the shelf filled with martial arts manuals. From as early as when he first learned to read and write, Wijehoyen lived with the arts. His father, who stood at the pinnacle of the cult, put his one and only son towards extreme studying. Reading, memorizing, that cycle continued ad infinitum. Instead of toys, he had weapons. To get familiar with them, he was taught to kill. First a bug, then a rat, rabbit, then a person. Sometimes his dad came. He looked over Wijehoyen's arts and gave him medicine. What his dad wanted was not a son, but the head of a cult that could rule the entire world. Wijehoyen tried his best to fit in with that mindset. The medicines and the martial arts that the head created combined with the genius of Wijehoyen made it possible for him to succeed. When he was 10, Wijehoyen was finally able to leave the library. From that point, Wijehoyen was used to murder and had the foundations necessary to learn the Pegasus Grace, that only the cult heads were allowed to learn. 3 years later, Wijehoyen studied the Pegasus Grace. It was all he remembered from his past. He had no one around him. All that was around him was a head that was like a god, and servants who followed orders. Friend. It was a word that Wijehoyen didn't know. He had never had such a thing like a friend. There was no one who was capable or had the requirements to be a friend with someone like Wijehoyen. First friend. Wijehoyen looked down outside the window. If it was his past world, he wouldn't have looked at Sungmin. No, there would be no reason to meet him. This place was different. There was no guilt here. There was no godlike head. This was a world called Area. He didn't want to go back. It had been a month since he came. In that month, he worried that when he slept, he would wake up thinking that this was a dream. When he woke up, he felt relieved that this was not a dream. What a shame, Wijehoyen muttered. He tied his hair back up inside. He has no talent, Wijehoyen muttered. Lee Sungmin was sweating as he was swinging his spear around. The amethyst cloud was a technique that could be counted as one of the best out of them all. It was nothing compared to the Pegasus Grace, but if he learned the amethyst cloud, it would be easy to conquer one area. However, like all techniques, the amethyst cloud was for the geniuses. Wijehoyen said it. The apex techniques and the first-rate techniques had a difference. Yet that wasn't for normal people. The names that usually learned these techniques were for people who had been named geniuses in their early age. The grace techniques had more kindness than the apex techniques, and amethyst cloud was one of them. As a genius, this kindness could be understood as kindness but not to a normal person. Lee Sungmin, in Wijehoyen's eyes, was very far from a genius. Sungmin knew that as well. He practiced for a month. The manual he memorized completely. He practiced it every time. At first, he was hopeful. The hope that he would get stronger by learning a grace technique. He had never learned something like this in his past life. He had only learned second-rate techniques. It didn't take long for that hope to disappear. It was obvious if he thought about it. It took him 13 years to get to level 8 with his second-rate technique. Amethyst cloud, this was a grace technique. But it didn't fit him. I'm not a genius. Sungmin breathed. The power of the amethyst cloud was going through his body. His breath stabilized. The rate that he wanted to learn the technique was way slower than he expected. The kindness, it was unkindness to Sungmin. He wasn't a genius, but he couldn't understand the kindness that was meant for the geniuses. Sungmin practiced the chase soul technique as well as the amethyst cloud. Even though the amethyst cloud wasn't right for him, the chase soul technique increased quickly combined with it. He didn't have enough inner strength yet, but the inner strength that was given by the amethyst cloud was nothing compared to the genuine heavens. Is there no way to increase my inner strength? Sungmin asked as he breathed. He was asking to Wijehoyen, who had come down from his room and was sitting in the shade. Medicine. Wijehoyen answered. That's the fastest way. Sungmin knew that was the fastest way. He was hopeful that there was another way. There is no other way. Yet, the good thing is that in this world there is a lot of chi. Usually when we say the size of inner strength, we use a sexagenary cycle. Therefore, in one cycle it's about 60 years of inner strength. He laughed as he said, "To get one cycle of inner strength, you need to study 60 years. To cut down the time we use potions." Therefore, he still needed to get the potion from the Colosseum. He didn't know how much he would gain, but he needed something at this point. "Are you going to the woods today as well?" Wijihoyan asked. Sung Min picked up a towel and wiped away the sweat on his forehead. "Yeah." "You need money?" "Yeah." "You're not going, right?" Wijihoyan had interest when he first arrived. However, in just a week, Wijihoyan lost the interest in the forest. As a hunting ground, there was barely rabbits and boars. Maybe some bears. A bit deeper and there were goblins. Sung Min usually went to the goblins. He could go for the orcs at this point, but he didn't want to overextend himself. Going to the forest to get money was one of his jobs. It had nothing to do with Wijihoyan. Wijihoyan was tired of doing the same thing over and over again after a week of it. Wijihoyan had another hobby now. When Sung Min went to the forest, Wijihoyan went around Genevis. "I'm going to the library." He pulled out his hand towards Sung Min. Sung Min sighed and pulled out 10,000 niri. "You already used up the money I gave before? It's been 4 days." "Of course." Wijihoyan laughed and answered. Instead of Wijihoyan, who didn't hunt, Sung Min gave him money. He didn't think it was a waste, to be honest. Wijihoyan helping him study every day was a great help to Sung Min. Leaving Wijihoyan, Sung Min left the inn. Using one thunder, he ran towards the hunting grounds. With the slow growth of amethyst cloud, his inner strength still increased a great deal. A month ago, he lost all his strength after just 10 minutes. Now he could be a bit liberal with his strength. Still, it wasn't enough to get to the hunting grounds without stopping. Body. He looked down at the body. It wasn't the first time he saw it. There wasn't as much at the entrance, but as he went inside, there were more bodies. They were usually no classes. Martial artists and magicians had enough power to stand up to these monsters, and they didn't stay in Genevis for a while. They know that they can't do much if they stay here hunting goblins and orcs. But no classes were different. They didn't have any strength to leave the city. It was an issue for the no classes. They had to stay here for a long time, either getting money for art manuals or magic or other skills. It wasn't something done in a short time. His past self stayed for 3 years. This was a human. There was distance left to the goblin area. He moved down and examined the body. 2 bodies. The weapon was a knife. At least that's what he thought. No weapon. The person must have took it. Goblins can't be out here. It's a person. There was something. Sung Min remembered back. It was this time? Sung Min wrinkled his face. His past life. There was something called no-class hunting. That was a fad for a while. It didn't stay for long. Just a week. A person hunted the no-classes who came to the goblin area. The purpose was to get the money and equipment. He didn't know who, but he only went after no-classes and stole their money and equipment. TSK. Sung Min clicked his tongue and stood up. In his past life, Sung Min didn't even get to the goblin area. Bad luck. He would leave the area. The blood hadn't dried yet. CKK. Sung Min shook. Bright ear. The skill that he had gotten in 2 months, it was a skill that increased hearing in forests. Bad luck. Sung Min ran forward with no hesitation. Chapter 13. Running. Sung Min didn't look back. He didn't know where the sound that he heard came from. Could have been a rabbit that he saw all the time, or even a boar. It could be something like that. But what does that matter? He saw a body. He saw a no-class corpse that was from the no-class hunting. He wasn't arrogant. Confidence was something that people who had things had. The sound came closer from behind. It wasn't a monster. A rabbit running, a boar running, it didn't match either of those sounds. The sound was light. It wasn't a goblin or an orc. A light but fast sound. It was getting closer. Human. Is this a speed technique? Sung Min wrinkled. It wasn't just running. If it was just running, the person wouldn't be able to catch up with his one thunder. Was it a martial artist? It wasn't good. Bad luck. A sudden moment he heard a sound. It wasn't a running sound. This was air. Sung Min threw his body around. With the speed that he was running at, he flew in the air. The knife the person threw slightly missed Sung Min and went away. Dang! He quickly tried to catch his fall, but his body rolled on the ground. Ha! Sungmin breathed hard as he stood up. It was a martial artist. The hunter muttered. He wasn't that tall. There was a skinny man standing on the ground. The area below his eyes were black like death. He didn't look like it was a bad choice. The man muttered as he wrinkled his eyebrows. But he had no intention of backing off. What is this? Sungmin acted with a scared face. Even with that face, Sungmin stayed cold. Running was impossible. But he knew one thing. The hunter's power wasn't that great. If it were great, then he wouldn't have tried to assassinate him with a throwing knife. He would have taken him down by running. He didn't even look confident with assassinations. Sungmin heard the sound and dodged the throwing knife. The third rate. The person that killed no classes for a week in the goblin area was just a third-rate martial artist. However, he wasn't to be taken lightly. With just a knife, a human can be a murder. The human body is just that fragile. Even as a third-rate martial artist, he had definitely learned the technique of killing a person. He had no hesitation towards murder. He had no hesitation in swinging a weapon. Martial arts were just basically a better way of killing. Not being used to fighting monsters, not being used to killing humans, this was a no class. To a no class like that, a person like this who kills other people with weapons is like a demon to them. Not to Lee Sungmin. Third class, can he do it? Sungmin raised both his hands. He was showing that he wasn't going to attack. The hunter's eyebrow went up. What are you doing? I don't want to die. Sungmin made a hesitating sound. He made a face like he was going to cry, and with his 14-year-old face it looked good. There is no one who wants to die. The hunter muttered. He pulled out the knife on his waist. Who wants to die? Hing. The hunter swung his knife. The knife made a loud sound as it cut the air. It was a sound that threatened. Lee Sungmin swallowed loudly. This was also a sound that was made to be heard if you let me live. Sungmin lifted the interdimensional pocket. The hunter's eyes narrowed. I'll give you this. What is that? The hunter asked. Sungmin opened the pocket. Looking at his movement, Sungmin put his hand inside the pocket. What he pulled out was a constructible spear. He had bought it after his spear broke after the orc fight. Creak. Sungmin created the spear as the hunter looked. What is that? The hunter's mouth opened. It was a surprised face. What made him surprised was not the spear, but was the pocket. It was the size of 2 hands, but a spear came out of it. It was surprising. It's called a interdimensional pocket. They'll give you this, so can you let me live? Why can't I just kill you and take it? The asterisk itch. His thinking was very logical. As he thought that, he still kept up his scared face. He didn't understand the pocket. This guy didn't have the understanding of this world. To explain, he didn't understand the magic behind the pocket. Teach, this pocket has magic inside of it. If I die, it doesn't work anymore. You want me to believe that? It's true. Sungmin shouted as he made a face. The hunter didn't know what to believe. Like Sungmin thought, he didn't know anything about magic. He knew how the world worked, and how hunting weak humans gave more profit than hunting monsters. So he was killing people who looked weak in this area. That was it. Magic? What is that? Give that to me, the hunter said. Leave the spear. The hunter added. Of course. Sungmin put down the spear. Up to here was Sungmin's plan. Using the pocket, he would get the hunter's interest. He would take the spear out. Then he would show the spear. The spear that was a weapon. Come here. The hunter ordered. Sungmin shook his legs and made a frightened face. He was glad that he was a 14-year-old doing this. He acted scared. He begged to let him live in return for the pocket. He put down the spear on the ground. And then he encouraged overconfidence. Can he do it? It wasn't that he wasn't scared. He was acting cool-headed, but if he did something wrong, he would die. There was no other way when escape was impossible. He had to kill the other person. He had to select a way. Frontal assault? No way. Lee Sungmin wasn't overconfident in himself. His amethyst cloud was still level 1, and the techniques that he was practicing weren't strong enough. Inner strength. He didn't have enough. If he used a spear, he would be able to survive a bit. But he wouldn't be able to win. In his past life, he was second-rate, the opponent now was third-rate. If he used his past body, he would be able to win in a head-on fight. But for now, that wasn't possible. He didn't have a strong enough body yet. Even after 2 months of strengthening, he was nothing compared to a strong man. He couldn't use inner strength to overcome that strength weakness either. Even as a third-rate, he probably knew more techniques than Sungmin did. Sungmin only learned for 2 months. Yet, Sungmin had experience. WTH 13 years of living, he had experience. A young child brings overconfidence. The distance was closer. Sungmin moved closer. Wait, throw it there. The hunter spat. The guy wasn't a complete idiot. If Sungmin was just a regular no-class, the hunter wouldn't be this aware. Maybe I shouldn't have ran away in the beginning? No, now it's too late. Sungmin stopped and pulled up the pocket. And he threw the pocket. A bit high and a bit to the left. The hunting reacted. He lifted his right arm up and moved his body to the side. It was to get the pocket that was heading diagonally. When he moved, Sungmin's hand was at the belt. The throwing knife was on his hand. PWK. The knife went forward. The hunter, surprised, moved. The knife barely missed the waist of the hunter. In his body, inner strength rose up. The amethyst cloud was being used. PCK. He used the one thunder to move forward. The hunter didn't have any time to swing his knife because of his broken stance. Sungmin pulled out the knife on the back of his waist and stabbed in straight inside. You son of a... The hunter screamed. Tired to scream. Sungmin swung the knife that was inside of him without hesitation. The hunter screamed. He moved back so it missed his vital points, but the knife cut through his stomach. The hunter used his last strength. Even as he was bleeding hard, he swung his life with his right hand. Then Sungmin, without thinking, moved close to the hunter's body. This distance. He couldn't move away. He had to move towards him. The weapon, like a knife, could never swipe something that was close to the chest. Maybe if he stabbed it down, the third-rate martial artists was like this. They didn't know how to adapt. They didn't know how to be cool-headed. They didn't know how to examine their opponent. PUK. The knife stabbed straight through the person's left chest. The knife stabbed straight through the heart. His body shook. His chin moved down, and the blood that came through his body straight out through the mouth flowed down. Awa. Ha. Sungmin breathed as he pulled out the knife. He pushed the body away with his left hand. The person shivered slightly and lost his strength. Sungmin wiped away the blood on the knife. Then he searched through the hunter's body. You stole a lot of money. He earned 210,000 Iri.